So, George, could you maybe start off by just sort of talking about the sort of the inspiration and maybe the vision for the Grand Rapids African American Museum and Archives?
Okay, yep, the Grand Rapids African American Museum and Archives, I can start there. You know, our acronym spells grandma, and we knew that grandma is usually the person in the family that holds the history, keeps the traditions alive, and so grandma was a definite, will be definitely a theme throughout our museum, especially in the African American community, where grandmas are really the person who holds the family together. So our initial thought was that we could use that and play on that acronym to give us the kind of museum that we want. We want to concentrate on local history here in Grand Rapids, West Michigan, and we hope that we can bring in, you know, national exhibits for slavery or civil rights from the Smithsonian, which will start to lend out a bunch of exhibits once the new museum opens up this year, and any other traveling exhibits from the Public Museum or the Art Museum. So we can supplement, but we want to tell the local story of local people, and that's where our inspiration is. We started the process about 3 years ago. Went through a couple boards until we found a passionate group of 4 or 5 people who really want to see this happen. And then we've got a larger advisory committee that advises us on particular types of things, legal issues, property issues, things like that. So right now our process, we are recently in February got our 501(c) status, so we are a legal nonprofit for the IRS, tax deductible, and we also are looking for a location. So those are the 2 main concerns for us right now.
Okay. I mean, you know, Grand Rapids certainly has as you well know, a really rich history of African American presence and organizing and so forth. I'm wondering what kinds of archives are you sort of hoping to sort of tap into in terms of both with the research or whether or not people are donating items to the museum?
Well, we're going to look at almost everything that has a place in African American history here. The one thing that we don't want people to do is just throw things out randomly and say, "Oh, this is no good, this is no good," without checking with us. Because, I mean, just this week, someone called me who is going out of business. They had a printing company here in Grand Rapids, and they had printed all the way back to about the 70s things for the NAACP banquet. So we were going through them, and each one had like history in its own right, but these are just little pamphlets that you would normally throw out. They say he said he didn't want them, and I said, well, yeah, I'll take a look at them. And they have histories of local people here. They have people that they've honored. They've got old ads that tell about the businesses that were here, and so every little thing has its place. And while we may not be able to exhibit everything at the same time, we certainly will be able to archive it, and that's why we added the word archives to our name, because we'd like to be able to just store things for people. You know, valuable things like slave papers or papers that, say, property papers for businesses or things like that. We'd be able to at least put them in a storage with temperature control and humidity control, so that it's better than having it under the trunk, under the bed, or in the pine or cedar chest at the end of your bed, because those kind of things will deteriorate and make valuable paper anyway not so valuable anymore.
Sure. Well, would you say that in many ways that the sort of the dominant narrative about Grand Rapids is pretty much from both wealthy and white folks? Would you say in some ways that the African American or the Grand Rapids African American Museum and Archives would be sort of a counter narrative to what is sort of the dominant?
You're absolutely right. We even doing our research, most of the research is coming from the Grand Rapids Press, and even as far back as it went, it was very one-sided the way they depicted our community. What we're doing, we have a grant from the Kellogg's Foundation and the Michigan Humanities Council to do oral histories, and even talking to people, we see a clear distinction in the way the quote news told stories and the way the people who were there tell stories. So, you do histories all the time, oral histories all the time, and that is also going to be a central part of our museum, where you'll be able to come up and maybe use some type of digital device and click on a screen, and you have somebody's grandmother or somebody's grandfather talking about Grand Rapids in the 30s, how it really was, how it was when they came here, or what side of town they decided to live on, and how the businesses treated them, how the companies treated them. So that narrative, we think, has not been told, maybe a little bit in Todd Robinson's book and a little bit in Dr. Jelks' books about Grand Rapids, but not a place where people can go and see archives related to it. And we were surprised at really what's out there. Once the word got out that we were starting a museum, people started to call us and say, well, I've got this piece of literature that my grandmother wrote, or our church is getting ready to get rid of a box of items, or even the city of Grand Rapids had information and things related to the Rosa Parks statue that we just got a donation for. So there's all types of things out there in the community, and the first thing is to try and save it and restore some of these things, and then secondly is to put it on display so people can get the real story, or at least one side of the story. It's not that the Grand Rapids Public Museum or the Art Museum don't do a good job of telling our story, African Americans. That's not what they're charged to do. Their missions are to take a larger view of art or history in this area. And what we want to do is take a narrow view of just our people. But it's not saying that our museum will have only African Americans. I mean, there's plenty of people here, whites, who are in the civil rights movement, that'll be have a prominent place in our museum. There's Grand Rapids has been sending missionaries to Africa for at least 100 years, and so while those stories still have to be fleshed out, there are collections here in town of African artifacts that are museum quality. I've seen them myself, and so there's different ways that people can help. And while we will be telling the story of African Americans, we also will be telling the stories of related people. I talked with a gentleman who was doing some oral histories in the Hispanic community, Latino community, and as we got to talking, we were asking the question, what was it like? Well, even at our lecture last week, I mean, I talked with Delia Fernandez, and when she said that Latinos came here and they settled on Granville Avenue, that's what they said about African Americans. They settled on Granville Avenue. So I said, well, what was the relation like? Were they at odds against each other? Were they homies? What was the relationship? So there's some relationships that we are still going to explore with the Latino community and the Native community, and to see just how things were back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. So there's a great opportunity for us, I think, to tell our story as well as see how other people fit in with our story too.
Okay. Well, maybe just lastly, can you give some just very concrete ways that people can both donate, donate financially or donate, archival materials, or at least, give you a heads up about some possible materials that might fit within the museum.
Okay, and locations.
Yes.
If you have a building you'd like to donate, that would be really great. Or if you know about a building that we haven't checked out yet, please contact us at our website, which is www.graamograndma.org. You can go on there also and donate. There's a donate button, and so you can go on and donate funds or monies. If you have a question about an item, you just write in the email there, contact me. My number is 616-540-2943, and you could just call me up and ask whether it's you have something that you think might be valuable. I'm a licensed appraiser also, so I can tell you whether it's valuable before you get rid of it, and since we are tax deductible now, we could give you a slip that would allow you to donate it at pretty much close to the cost. But those are the ways that people can help. We will, as we get closer to finding a building and opening up, we'd like to use people in the community to do all of our labor, landscaping, security, drywall, whatever you have a talent at. Once we find a building, you can just come down and do some volunteer work. We also, being an archive, would like to have teachers, people who like to do history research, genealogy, things like that, to come down and help us. So there'll be plenty of ways that people can help once we open up. And now, even that we get closer, we're starting to look for funds to keep our building or not our building, but our organization going right now. So, and we were blessed enough to get funding from the Dar Eyes Foundation that is helping us to search for at least an office space downtown first, and then we can get a building later. But anything like that, we'd be grateful for, and eventually we'll have some type of wall or bricks or something that'll let everybody know who helped us get this project off the ground.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, George.
Thanks, Jeff.